sit up front?
Wherever you want to sit.
I'm going to sit by board.
Perfect.
Keep her up.
Perfect.
That is different denomination.
Yes, exactly. All right. That's fine. You want to sit there? Is that good? Here, I'll sit you here. Maybe you'll sit with us here.
Somebody else, look.
Just Garden of Eden and it ends in the Garden of Gethsemane. And every step along the way, every part of the story of Jesus, of the account of Jesus, of his life, every account of the witness of the Hebrew Scriptures leads us to this one call in our human life, to trust God. Trust in the Lord in all your ways, and lean not to your own understanding. This is the call of God. This is the call of Jesus. It's the call of Abraham. It's the call that goes out to our lives to say, if you want to have life, it comes with trust. That's how you're made. It's what brings you forward in life. So we begin each service in Lent with this, in God alone. And if you're having trouble trusting God, let the song pull you in. Let it take you in that direction. That's what music can do. It can take you where you want to go. And God alone is my hope, my strength, my shelter, my home, my heart, and my liberty. Let's sing it together.
If thou art
that. God created the world. Why did God have to pick trust? It's the hardest thing in the world for us to do. How can the gateway to life and love and liberty be trust? Because you know as well as I do, we've trusted and we've been sorry. And others have trusted us. Trust is the pathway, but it is full of thorns and thickets. It's got big rocks on it. How am I to trust? Because, the volume of trust gets turned up when my fragile life is in front of me. Why did God have to pick that? What Job said. Why did you make me like you made me? God sees life as trust. If you look into the universe as you look, you might not have learned it that way in science class, but every molecule trusts every electron. Every cell that grows upon the trust of the other. Every part of life, everything in a delicate balance all around us, all the way out to the outside of the universe, depends upon trustful relationships. It's in the heart of all of creation. It's just broken in the heart of humans. So we come then to ask Jesus, what shall we do? With a history like we have, what shall we do? Jesus says, well, God has made a way. God has a provision. Because in God's trustworthiness to you, God forgives. Forgives. Invites you to forgive and invites you to know forgiveness. Now, how do we get that? Jesus said it's as simple as being willing to speak the truth of your brokenness. If you are honest, and you name the brokenness of your own life, it removes the obstacles on the path to trust, because naming the truth is trusting God. So we come then to this part of our service. The call to confession is a call to trust. Your heart will tell you you're better off to keep all of your brokenness to yourself, all of your broken ways to others, keep it to yourself. We're better off, all of us, to keep it to ourselves. And Jesus says, no. It will devour you. Speak the truth. And then you will come face to face with the greatest love, the greatest compassion, the greatest source of life that you could ever know. So then, as a guide to our confession, I invite you to say responsibly, I think the way it's laid out is I pretty much say one sentence and then you say the other sentence back with great strength and vigor. Sending God, you speak to souls both calm and chaotic, and summon us to follow.
Let your call presence flow through our lives, so we disregard your voice and cling to the soils of safe, familiar places.
Guiding Spirit, your wind whips through communities, both settles and stirring, and urges us toward new expressions of faith.
Let your call presence blow us off course, so we ignore your dynamic spirit and shelter within protected harbors.
Saving Christ, you enter into hearts both trusting and skeptical, and plant within us the seeds of faith.
Forgive us when we ignore your summons to grow as disciples.
Immerse us in the Spirit's sustaining waters, so that we might respond to your call with faith and faithfulness. moments in worship is when a child is being baptized. And, I'm sort of always interested in seeing how the child interacts to the marble place and sound of the water. And I love when the child hears the water and reaches for it. Reaches. Now, I know I'm biased, but my grandson, when he was baptized in the Roman Catholic Church, and the priest held him like this. He was looking up at the priest. And he did a back bend all the way back and put both of his hands down in the water. Let his head fall. It's that moment. It is that moment. After our hearts have condemned us, and after the deepest secrets of our lives we believe are locked away in the most secret place, and the things we have conspired to do in history, the horrible things that we have done, and we believe that history has now taken them away, but they're remembered in us. And we think they're all locked away and we can live. Jesus says, don't put them away. Come here. Let me wash you. Let me cleanse you. Let me give you the meaning of forgiveness. It's not denial. Let me show you how to really forgive, how to lean heavily into God's ability to forgive you so that you can forgive others, so that your life can be free on this planet, so that you can live and maybe fail again, but always claiming the power of God's mercy and grace. Friends, if I say, believe the good news, you'll say, in Jesus Christ we are forgiven. What if I say, friends, trust the good news of the gospel? It's the same word. It's the same meaning. Friends, trust the good news of the gospel of God.
In Jesus Christ we are forgiven.
Let us stand and sing a bit together, shall forgiveness and grace, the ability to renew and to restore, to speak a word to you and to me which puts our feet in troubled times on a rock of peace, to be able to breathe, to be able to say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm standing on solid ground. Friends, this is the meaning of this sign that we share with one another, reminding each other of the passing of the peace. There's a song the choir is working on. It's about the bones. It's the hip bone connected to the leg bone, and I can't wait till we do it. But there is a part of it There's a part of it that I will not be able to sing. Because when we get to it, I'm overwhelmed with joy. Because the song says there is nothing in life that is broken apart that God cannot put back together. And then the songwriter says, now hear the word of the Lord. Hear the word of the Lord. The word of the Lord, my friends, to you today is peace. Peace that passes our understanding, peace that becomes a foundation of our life, peace that sets us free to be ministering to others in our time of need. May the peace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all.
And also with you.
Now, I am going to tell you this right now. You're not going anywhere. I'm going to tell you you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to restructure yourself because we have either got to figure out how to be together and not touch each other, or we're not going to be able to be together at all. The churches in Washington, D.C. got together and decided they were not meeting, and they're not going to meet until the coronavirus is gone. I don't want to be a part of that. I'd rather see you and say, peace be with you. Do a peace sign. That's it. You can turn around. You can smile at each other. One of the things we're doing in the preschool is we're washing our hands 10 times a day. When you get to church, you might want to come in, go in the bathroom, and wash your hands. Anytime you get a chance, go wash your hands. And this is a sign of protection for you. It's also a sign of blessing that you might prevent someone else from getting it. So, peace be with you all.
And also with you.
Thank you. You may be seated. children to come up for a time of conversation. Hi. Hi, how are you today? I put this on my little storytelling stool to remind you that during Lent, I think your Sunday school teachers are going to give you these, or at least when you go upstairs, when you get one. This is a little folding bank. It's a form of a fish. I can't possibly do it, but you'll know how to open it up, put it together as a bank, and then during Lent, we'll be collecting your dimes, nickels, and quarters, and whatever you want to squeeze in it. And then on Palm Sunday, we'll collect them here, and then we put them into the offering, which is the 1 great hour of sharing, which means that children and adults from all over the world are going to be part of this offering. We're going to collect up some money, and we're going to give it to people whose houses are destroyed by hurricanes and tornadoes. And we're going to give it to people who are hungry every day. We're going to give it to people who are old and need assistance and don't have it. Yes? Yeah, that's really frustrating, isn't it? You meet someone's homeless on the street. Someone told me a really cool idea about how to be prepared. Like, sometimes women, mothers have a lot of purses they don't use. And so they're suggesting that in your car, you might want to pack a purse. Just pack it with things like snack crackers and maybe a bottle of water. Men, I guess, could do the same thing. And that way, when someone approaches your car, you could just simply put the window down and say, "Here, I was thinking about you. And I was prepared for you." This is kind of like that, only it's happening all across the land as people are trying, especially in the season of Easter, to say, "We care about you, and we would like to help you if we can." Okay? So remember to fill them up. I think adults, you can get them too if you want them. Sometimes it's a good way to remind you. Now, here's my big question for you today. See if you know the answer to this. So you were all born, right? You weren't hatched or anything. Right? You were born, right? Yes? Yes. Okay. Do you know anything from what you've seen? Do you have any idea why your parents wanted to have you? Yes? To have joy. Okay, we're done. What do you think? What do you think? What? You know, like kids are like crazy. They like eat your food. They mess up your house. They do all kinds of. Why do you think your parents wanted to have you? Wait, any idea? To keep the world going. Wow. That's awesome. So you feel a lot of responsibility with that? You know, your job, that's a big job. That's a really big job. Why do you think your mom and dad want to have you? Any idea? Any idea? It's interesting. Like if your mom and dads were to come up here, then I would ask them. And I know they would say things like, because we wanted some fun in our lives. We wanted to have joy. We wanted to love somebody, right? All right, now, if that wasn't a hard enough question, now I'm going to ask you the bigger one. Why? Thank you. Again. Why did God make you? Wait, let me back up. I know you were born to your mom and dad, but you do know, right, that God made you. Yes? Why? Why do you think God made you? Yes? So you could live, but why? Why you? Did the world need you? What do you think? Well, here's what I want to tell you. Kids all around the world, always listening to preachers talk and listening to things. But what I love, actually in the Scottish tradition, children were told that the answer to the question, why did God make you, is to glorify God and to enjoy God forever. And most kids go, what does that mean? But there's a village in the north and eastern side of Africa where kids come up and they do conversations like this in the church. And the pastor always asks the kids, why did God make you? And he teaches them this as the answer. Because God thought you might just like it. God thought that you might just like being who you are. The unique fingerprint. There's nobody like you. And God thought, I don't know, I would have liked to have been there the day God was thinking about it. Right? Let me see, who shall I make now? And what fun thing can I give them that they might enjoy their life on earth? Why did God make you? Because God thought you might just like it. Thanks for coming up for this time of conversation today. lived in a house that had a built-in oven. It was a double oven, one above and one below. And if you know anything about me, you know that when things are broken, I have to fix them. Well, the double oven above for years had been broken and nobody had ever tried to fix it. And I decided on one Saturday morning this was going to be the day. Me and that double oven, we were going to have an encounter, and that thing was going to go back into service. And I was particularly excited because I had learned that at the time I lived in the outskirts of Trenton, New Jersey, which at one time was this booming metropolis of industrial parts and all kinds of things, and there was a very unique appliance supply store, a parts store for appliances of all kinds, and it was a massive warehouse. And I was really comforted because I just knew that they were going to have the one part that I needed to make this oven work. And so I got in my car and I went down to the oven supply place, and there's parts of it. Sometimes my stories are very long, too long for church. But I'm just going to tell you there's a lot more in the beginning of the story so that you will understand how my level of frustration was growing. Because I got to the store, and what I found out was that even though I had taken a picture of the part, and I had all the information about the part that I needed, when I got to the counter in Saturday morning, I was told that without the actual serial number, they would not sell me the part. And I said, but I know this is going to be the right part. And they said, it's our company policy. If you do not have the serial number of the part, we will not sell it to you. Because then you will bring it back and you'll break it while you have it. It'll be the wrong part. We're not going there. Now, I will tell you that I tried a couple different ways to get around that. I went back, and the serial number was on the part, but it had been scratched off. And so I tried to make one up. And so now it's 1 o'clock on Saturday. And I'm arriving at this would-be problem-solving parts store. And I walk in, and I'm second in line in the parts store. And above the countertop, there is a sign. It's a really big sign, and it says, I am here to serve you. I paid attention to that sign. But what was interesting to me was that when I had arrived at 1 o'clock to do this conversation about the part for the oven, the person behind the counter was talking on their phone. And they were talking very clearly to someone about something that had nothing to do with appliance parts. It was a big conversation that was going on. So I stood there at the beginning. I'm like, well, I'm sure this will only be a minute or two. The conversation went on and on and on. And the person in front of me was growing in impatience as well, and we were looking at each other and trying to figure out, how does this work? I mean, what do we do now? And she decided that she wasn't up for any kind of confrontation at all, so she just peeled off and left. And I thought, well, that'll get the attention of the person behind the counter. Nope. Conversation just continued. In fact, at one point, we must have been making too much distraction because the person behind the counter turned their back to us so that we wouldn't distract them in their conversation. I don't know how long it was. It felt like 15 minutes. And every click of the clock that went, I was becoming angrier and angrier. And so, I finally interrupted the person on the phone. And I was able, from where I was standing, actually this is how angry I was, I reached up and grabbed a hold of the sign that was above their head. And I unhooked it from the two chains. And I took it down and I laid it. I'm sure it was a gentle laying. And I laid it on the counter and I said to the person behind the counter, don't put this sign over your head, because you are not here to serve me. You are not. And I tell the story to you today because I think that the church, what is the church, in all of its varieties of manifestations and in all of its existences around the world, needs to hear the text today one more time. One more time, so that we are not any way confused about how we are to be spending our time here on the planet Earth. Let me read it for you again. I will tell you that when you read the scholars about this, they will tell you that this text, this actual text, is the pivotal text for understanding everything else that happens both in the New Testament and in the Old Testament. And yet, when you check with most people in the church, they do not know this text. Let me read it again. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the ones who curse you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will find the blessing of God." Now, the reason I tell the story about the worker in the appliance store is that for the most part, in my life and in the life of the church, I think that we are like that person behind the counter. We are existing in the world, we come together, we sing our hymns, we do what we have to do, we do the things we like to do, the things we're familiar with, but we do not know the mission sign that is hanging over our head. We do not know anything about the calling of our lives. We do not know the answer to the question. Maybe the children will remember the idea of why did God make you, but as far as the biblical witness, both Old and New Testament is concerned, why did God make the church? Why did God call people of faith together? God called us together because God is trying desperately to create a blessing for all the families of the earth. God has not called us together for ourselves. God did not call to Abram and Sarah and say, "Go and I will be really good to you." God said, "I will give you in your hands blessings that you will have because I don't know how else to bless the families of the earth." And this is not the families of the earth that we know, it's the families of the earth that we do not know. It's the families that exist on the planet. You remember with Eve and Adam, the brokenness that snuck into the world, the breach that was opened up between God and humanity, between human beings, between men and women, between human beings and the natural order, the broken breach that exists. And God decides to respond to that in the story, in the ancient witness of Scripture, by saying, "I will see to it that all the families of the earth receive blessing from me." And how is God going to do it? God is going to do it by commissioning you and me to be that blessing on the earth. Well, what does that mean? What does it really mean? If this is the fulcrum test of all of our existence, if this is not just about the church, but if this is about my life, what is it really saying? Jesus is saying, or the Old Testament lesson is telling us to live our lives with a purpose. And the purpose of our lives, if you don't know the purpose of your life, if you want to know why God made you, if you want to know why God is sustaining you in your life and for what reason, it is because God has an idea that who you are and how you are may actually be just what your neighbor needs. You might actually be able to be a blessing, to actually make a difference in someone else's life on God's behalf. And the essential beginning part of being that blessing is you have to be ready to move off of what you're familiar with. I was reminded too with this coronavirus that is rising up and making its power known. Someone once said human beings think the future will be shaped by people who have big weapons and great big structures, but the biologists will tell you that the future will be shaped by the tiniest little microbe that exists on the planet. And so the coronavirus, it's raising its ugly head. And I was reminded of the story back in the Middle Ages when the Black Plague, the plague of death, was sweeping through Europe. And there was absolutely no idea what caused it. There was only 1 in 3 survived. So if you look left and right, people on either side were going to die, and it was that devastating. People were dying. When they've gone back and they've investigated the experience of that plague, and they do research of how did it spread, what was involved in, all the rest of it, they found a very interesting phenomenon. And that is, throughout the countryside of Europe, pretty much 2 out of 3 people died everywhere, except within 1 day's walking distance from where the monks in the monastery lived. In fact, you could see a chart, if you drew it from on high, a circle around the monastery. People didn't die. They didn't die. And when they began to plot it, it was eerie. It was like, wait, is there some mystery to what's going on here? Because the death toll within 1 day's walking distance, which meant you would walk away a day and back a day, people didn't die. And as they studied it even further, what they found was that inside the walls of the monastery, the monks said, we have no idea what we can do, but here's what we're going to do. These people who are dying will really appreciate a drink of water. So they loaded on their shoulders jugs, and they walked. And they gave people a drink of water. They didn't know it at the time, but the antidote to the plague was fresh water. In their simple act, in their simple seeking to say to God, how can we be a blessing in the world? How can I, with all of my problems and all of my fears, how can I be a blessing? What the Bible teaches us is, friends, that's the most important question for you. God will draw you off of your comfort zones. God will bring you out of those places. God said to Abram, go from the place that you know best and venture out into the world. Be willing to engage in the enterprise of living life and do it with one thing in mind. How can I be a blessing to the persons who I live near or to whom I will travel? Think of it. What an amazing thing. What did Jesus say? If just a cup of water I place within your hand, then all I require of you is a cup of water offered to someone who is in need. Live your lives to bless the families of the earth. What you and I do or don't do in the response of God's call to the mission of blessing affects the whole earth. It makes it different in the world. God is in the world, reconciling God's self to the world, bringing people back together. You shall be repairers of the breach is the phrase from the One Great Hour of Sharing. You are called upon to be engaged in the world because of your sense of your faith in God. As you build that faith in God, Jesus and the prophets of the Old Testament challenge you to turn and be a blessing to the families of the earth. There's another story in Scripture in the prophets. The prophet Elijah, at one point, a great and courageous man, in challenging the people of his time, challenging their ways, their awful ways. And after a big confrontation, he takes off and he runs. He runs out of the land of Israel. He runs out of his own familiar territory. And he runs into the land of a stranger. And he arrives there thinking he's got no food, no water, nothing. And he figures that he's about to die. He's a prophet of God. He's loved by God, but he's ready to die. he ends up outside the house of a widow who has a child. And that widow sees him and says, "Friend, I don't know who you are, but if you're interested, my son and I have one meal left. And we're willing to share our meal with you, and then all three of us will die. But we'll share what we have." And so she makes up the last bit of batter, and she makes up the last bit of oil, and she makes a cake which is large enough to feed all three of them for one night. And she feeds him, a stranger, and ministers a blessing to him. In the morning, when she woke up, the jar she had drawn the flour from had one more day's flour in it. And the oil vial had one more portion of oil. The prophet Elijah lived with that woman and her child and her act of blessing for 2 months, and they never ran out of food. You can say what you will. There are wise and profound and motivating statements to summarize the journey of faith, to say what Christianity is about and what it's not about and how we're to live our lives. But my friends, all I would ask of you is to always remember the sign that hangs over our heads. We are here to serve and bless the world, to minister a blessing to all the families of the earth, in God's name, in response to the brokenness that has entered the world. May God strengthen us always in the business, both large and small, of being a blessing, of making a difference, of doing that one thing that we can do for someone who might never have expected it, and to do it because of the sign that hangs over our head. We are here to serve the world in God's name. Amen. Let us pray. Lord, we lift our prayers to you, and we confess we often don't know how to pray. It may be because we've tuned out the struggle and the strife of the world, because we're overwhelmed by it. It just seems too big to us. We don't know what to say. Or maybe we don't know how to pray because we're overwhelmed with our own needs and our own fears for our neighbors and our friends. You've shown us how to love one another. But that love comes with a price. We become discouraged when people become ill. We become frightened when nations rise against nations. We want to run and hide. Teach us how to pray, oh God. Teach us how to open our lives upward to you in the middle of all of life's circumstances. Teach us how to count our blessings, how to see in the middle of the strife what is all around us. Help us to draw on it. And then let our prayers rise to you. We pray in particular for those who are lost in confusion today and fear. People trapped on boats and ships, and for people worried about their own health and the news that sweeps across the world. We pray for nations where circumstance of struggle for them, for homelessness and food and water, for journeys they have traveled on hundreds of miles seeking some shelter, some safety from oppressive gangs, people who seek to do them in. People for whom the coronavirus doesn't even rise to the list of their concerns. Lord, help us not to turn a deaf ear to the needs of the world. Stir in us again the confidence that we have from you, that we can make an impact in the world for blessing. Help us to walk a mile from where we live every day to find someone who needs just a drink of water. Lord, strengthen us in our own lives and for our own needs. For the compulsive ways that we live, compulsive shopping and spending, and compulsive consuming, and compulsive drinking, all of which to somehow cope with the pain of life. Oh Lord, invade our lives with your grace. Give us deep and abiding faith, so that even in the midst of our needs and worries, we might be a blessing to someone who is in need. Strengthen us, O God. Place within us the blessing of your love and grace, the confidence of forgiveness and hope. Allow us to be the lights that sit on the hill, that draw others to life and light and hope. Heal in us the brokenness of our own experience of life and make us healers of others. Help us to be so drawn up in your life in the world that we leave what is familiar and wander off like you looking for the sheep that is lost. Lord, give us in our lives the song of heaven, the song of grace, the song of hope. Teach us how to sing even in the darkest night, and how to teach others the song of faith in you. For you are our reward. You are our hope. You are our song. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into the temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. It's good to be in worship with you together today. I'm glad you encountered the time change and made the adjustments that were necessary. I'm very grateful for those that joined us again in a double size of the adult ed class. If that happens next time, let's see, it was like 15 the first week, 30 today. If we go to 60 next week, then we'll have to meet in here. What a big problem that is. I do want to encourage you to watch for the news about the one great hour of sharing and perhaps plan in advance to be part of this worldwide giving. It's the one thing that Christian churches do together. We found a lot of ways to divide and separate, but around this offering, we can give together and be part of a unified voice in the world. I also want to draw to your attention, I think there are flyers in the back, Sunday, March 15th. We will be celebrating again the presence of the Eccentric Theater Company, who will be bringing us another opera, a chance for us to be enriched. And, the vision vision and mission of this group is to reacquaint us with the power and the passion of opera. And we're happy to be able to provide the opportunity for that re-experience right here. You don't have to go very far. It's right here for us. It's March 15th at 2:30 p.m. What else am I supposed to be? Thank you. I knew there was something really important. I do not have it written down the date. Is it March the 22nd?
Yes.
Sunday, March the 22nd, congregational meeting will be held. This is our annual meeting. We'll be reviewing the budget. We'll be getting the annual reports and going over where God has taken us in the past year and praying for God's vision for the year to come. Yes, we'll also be electing new officers and carrying out our plan for where we go. That will be held immediately following the worship service on March the 22nd. Let us worship God by presenting our offerings, our gifts for God's work to be a blessing in the world. So as you leave the sanctuary today, the thing that comes most natural to me as a pastor is greeting you, giving and receiving hugs, and reminding each other that God goes with us. I'm not going to greet you at the end of the service today. I think that part of the calling that we have is to participate in a way of blessing, to try as hard as we can to follow the directions that we have, to try to stem the tide of this. My daughter called me up to remind me I am in the age category of high risk. She said old men. That's not very nice. So she said you have to be careful. But I work a lot with children, with little children. And I work a lot with very elderly people. And I feel like I don't have a cup of water that I can carry out, but I can do this much. And I will miss the chance to greet you. Email me if you have things you want to tell me, and we'll still continue our sense of community together, shall we? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the face of God shine upon you and shine through you into the world. May God be kind and gracious unto you. May God be kind and gracious unto everyone that you know and that you love. And through you, may God be kind and gracious to everyone that you don't yet know, especially to those that are convinced that no one loves them at all. May God teach us the profound and deep lesson, one more time, of being kind and gracious to one another, that we might bear witness to the life of God on this planet that leads us to peace. Amen.
Am I helping you?
Yes.
Here we go.
A good thing, I'm doing the yoga and qigong. It's exercise. It's making me tired. You know, I'm sort of like, it happens when you don't need to, you know, just getting back into it. Movement is always the story, you know, but it takes time. It doesn't, you feel worse before you feel better sometimes. So I'm feeling everybody, you guys okay? But you have that lingering, he was cold and he caught another cold down. We hadn't even seen, like he wouldn't even see his son has a cold, his grandson, we wouldn't see anybody. And then the baby, she won't let anybody see him unless you had a flu shot. So he did. It's all been, you know, tough. Hello, so I hope you feel better. That's rest. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm not sick, but I'm tired. But I